Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays and Stores podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover Media Network. My name is Kanaye. Today we have an absolutely huge win to talk about for Dan Hurley and co. UConn made the trip up to Omaha, Nebraska to play at Chi Health Center against Creighton, a place where they've never won before previously until that is Tuesday night. Um, Obviously, I think the biggest story to come out the game is Liam McNeeley and his historic performance. 38 points, just wire to wire, could not. I mean, he played so well. And only his second game back from injury. So, of course, I'm going to talk a lot about that. And then, yeah, just, I mean, some other takeaways I had from the game. I know there's a few concerns, but I definitely think UConn has started to trend in the right direction. And they've cleaned some things up. And I think there's an argument to say UConn might be back. The three-peat train might be back up and running. And then I just also want to touch a little bit briefly more about just kind of Dan Hurley becoming a villain in college basketball, and a look just really quick preview for the Seton Hall game slated for Saturday at in Newark at the Prudential Center. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast, if you like any of the other content you see on this channel, please subscribe, like. We love seeing your comments in the comment sections below. Like seeing what you guys have to say about what it is we're talking about in the videos that we make. And please tell other people about it. Tell your friends. It all helps with YouTube's algorithm and being able to get this content out to more people. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. UConn won 70-66 at Chi Health Center. Just a huge win. I believe UConn was 0-8 in Omaha before Tuesday night. So definitely really big win. This is definitely a game that I think I talked about it last week. I kind of did not expect UConn to win at all. Um, I talked about how they were going to have to come out hot, and Liam McNeeley was going to need to have a big game. I didn't think he was going to need to have this big of a game, but I mean, he obviously, of course, scored 38 points. But yeah, I felt this is a game that UConn cannot come out slow and not fully locked in, and it got a little scary at points. I mean, they went down 14. It was kind of starting to look a little bit like a typical Creighton. Um, just a typical game at Omaha where UConn kind of just doesn't have it. That's the place gets pretty electric with their fans. I know it was dollar beer night there in Omaha. Know a lot of their fans were out there and they're getting rowdy. And I know they had some things to say to Dan Hurley. I know Hurley also had some things to say to them after the game too. But yeah, I mean, I to be quite frank, I didn't think UConn was. I just felt after the St. John's loss that they were it was kind of gonna kind of drag them down and carry over into this game, possibly just having to play on a Tuesday night in Omaha, a place where you've never won before, a team that seems to just have Dan Hurley's number throughout his tenure at UConn. And I mean, it's just a lot of credit goes to Liam McNeeley and how he played in this ball game. I mean, just really just historic performance from him. Kind of touching back on what I was just saying about me expecting Liam McNeeley to need to have a big game for them to win. Like I just mentioned, I didn't think he was going to score 38, but I thought if he was going to be able to get into like the 22 to 25 point range, that was going to be enough to maybe take UConn over the top. That wouldn't have been, but thankfully he did way more. But yeah, I just felt the way Creighton plays teams defensively, where they're not necessarily very aggressive in pressuring the ball, but they play drop coverage and they try to funnel you after you have a guy rolling off the screen. You get a guy going to the basket. Obviously, you're kind of playing in that 2-on-1, which is kind of leaving McNeely's bread and butter and being able to get into the lane, play that 2-on-1. He normally makes the right decision every time. But yeah, I think that's kind of what Creighton does. They funnel you in to try to force you to take a tough shot or make a tough pass on Ryan Kalkbrenner, who is arguably one of the best rim protectors we've seen in college basketball over his collegiate career. He doesn't foul, super disciplined, and again, one of the more underrated players I think in the sport over the past few years. But I think where Liam McNeeley excels. I think he does really well attacking drop coverage. He's able to kind of get into the short, get into the lane, get into the painted area, and go up with a little floater, short jump shot from 8 to 10 feet. And he's able to hit that shot consistently, and he did that in this game. But I think more than anything this was probably the best shooting performance I think we've seen out of Liam this year. I understand he's missed a lot of time. I want to say it was 6 weeks he missed. since he rolled his ankle against DePaul and sidelined him for a while. But yeah, I mean, I think this by far was his best shooting performance of the season. He came in to STORRS advertised as one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in this freshman class. And well, he's had moments where he's knocked down some big threes. I don't think I think we kind of haven't seen the consistency in his jump shot from distance so far until this game at Creighton. He went 5 for 10 from three. He had some really, really big ones, specifically that stretch where I want to say it was 64 to 65 for the longest time. Or my mistake, 44 to 45 for the longest time. And Liam comes down and bangs 2 threes in a row. And I mean, he's just getting pumped up. It's just a lot of the similarities I've talked about with him and Cam Spencer kind of being those like energy guys. And this is something I think this team has lacked in Liam's absence. Just having a guy who is really, really dialed in, like energy speaking in terms of the energy and just his tenacity and just will to win. I mean, there were points in the St. John's game where he might have been 2 threes in a row again. I think it was, yeah, where he knocked on the second three and he just motioned to the crowd and waving his arms up, trying to get people in Gamble fired up. And I mean, that was cool to see in person. But yeah, I mean, I think this team lacked that, and they missed it a lot without him in the stretch of games where they played without him. But yeah, I mean, on top of that, 10 rebounds, again, 8 defensive rebounds. I talked about how in his absence, we were missing a lot of the defensive rebounding. He's probably, it's probably between him and Terrace in terms of who is the best defensive rebounder on this basketball team. And I just think not having Liam hurt in UConn, missing out on a lot of opportunities to get out and run on the fast break. And that, I think that would have opened things up a lot more for their offense and not forcing them to have to get into their half court sets all the time. But yeah, just having Liam back, it's been great so far. I mean, he played well in the St. John's game. He was obviously a little rusty. Wasn't super efficient from the floor. This game, I mean, to do this in your second game back after being hurt is incredible. I mean, he's in rare air with his performance. I saw a graphic. I want to say, forget who put it up, but he stands alone with only Steph Curry and Kevin Durant as the only freshman to score 30 plus, 10 plus rebounds, and make 5 plus threes in a game. And that's incredible. Most points ever by freshmen in UConn history in a game. I think it might have been in Big East play. I'm not positive on that. I'm not sure if it's just in general ever, but yeah, I mean, this is the most points scored we've seen from a player kind of in this 2 to 3 year run that UConn has gone on. I know Jordan Hawkins scored, I want to say it was 30 or 31 back 2 years ago against St. John's at home. And then obviously last year, T-New, really great performance at Fog Allen Fieldhouse, almost brought UConn to the win there. He scored 31 in that game. But yeah, I mean, just I think I didn't necessarily know. I don't want to say this as a slight to Liam. I didn't think he was the type of player to be capable of doing this. Obviously, I thought, of course, he's able to kind of have nights where he goes and gets you 25, 26, but to score 38, I mean, I think he just coming in, he was advertised as a guy who was pretty, good at being able to do a lot of different things, just being able to be an all-around player and do everything kind of. And I think maybe people didn't realize that he's capable of kind of carrying a team and being able to single-handedly go out and win you a game on his own. I know we did see that certain points of the season earlier, like at Baylor, my mistake at Gamble against Baylor, and then at the guard against Gonzaga where he scored 26. He's a big-time player. He shows up for the big games, clearly. And I just think, again, he's kind of advertised as a guy who is pretty good at doing a little bit of everything. And I think it shocked a lot of people to see something like a performance like this out of Liam. And I think he's shown that he's more than worth taking in the top 10 of the NBA draft this year. And it's really unfortunate because I think he's a guy whose game is so well suited for college basketball. And you think about how good he could be if he were to come back one more year. But I just don't think that's a guy that's you're going to be able to keep in STORRS to pass the season, which is unfortunate. But of course, he needs to go chase the NBA if it's on the table. And I mean, I recommend that to any of those guys. Solo ball if he ends up getting any first round looks this year. I think definitely probably should take that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, just a really all around great performance for Liam. It was incredible to see. And I mean, I just think the situation of the game where Hassan Diarra is not healthy still. I think he's still banged up. He only played 8 minutes in this game, and I mean, UConn was essentially without their point guard for the entire game. Liam was playing point guard. I understand Ada Mahaney really kind of hasn't been what you thought you were going to get from him when you recruited him out of the transfer portal, and he's kind of not really there being able to run the point. And I think Hurley just said, "Hey, we have no one else to turn to." Liam's probably been one of the better ball handlers and being able to run the offense through. He's been kind of like the offensive hub at times for this team this year, and I just think Hurley was in the state of mind where he was just saying, "Hey, give it to Liam, get out the way, let him do his thing, let him get it to that 2-on-1, go into the lane, let him knock down shots." He was able to get to the line a lot, shot 10 free throws, and I mean, just really great game. And yeah, I mean, additionally, they had to run a small lineup out there with Terrace Reed and Samson Johnson both getting into foul trouble. Um, and I really do have to say, I like that lineup they had out there when they went to the small ball. They had Alex Caravan at the 5, which of course isn't ideal, but he showed at points last year when Klingon was out that he was able to do it. And he's done it at points this year too, especially again in this Creighton game. And I think he did a pretty good job. And then, yeah, rolling out that large lineup with Solo Ball, Liam, Jay Stu, Jay Ross, if he's in, you can kind of interchange those guys. But I mean, I really did like that lineup. And going forward, again, I don't know how healthy Hassan is. I don't know if he's going to play much in the Seton Hall game. Again, I think that's a game that you probably can win without your starting point guard. And I wouldn't hate to see a starting lineup of Solo, Liam, Jay Stu, AK, and Samson. I mean, that's what they rolled out with that Creighton. I like that lineup a lot. I think that's pretty similar to the lineup they had against St. John's when they went on that run where they went up 16 points, which was kind of confused me why Hurley didn't go back to the lineup in that game when it's starting to get tight. But yeah, he rolled with that lineup in this game, and I think it did. I mean, I think they played really, really well with that lineup. So yeah, just you need Hassan to get healthy, and I just want to talk a little bit about Alex Caravan. He's struggled a lot lately. Um, I think a lot of his struggles are attributed to kind of the mental aspect of the game. I think with Liam going down, I've talked about it in the past where with Liam going down, AK was moved up in the scouting report. He was kind of, in a sense, the number one guy in the scouting report for teams who had to play UConn, where Alex isn't getting the matchups with natural fours that he is getting when Liam is playing. And he has more athletic threes, long wings who are able to stay in front of Alex and kind of disrupt a lot of UConn's action. They were able to blow up screens. They didn't let Alex Caravan run off of those screens, run off of pin downs, and get his looks. And I think a lot of it I think a lot of it also comes back to him feeling that he didn't really step up in that role when UConn needed him to without Liam. And I think he's probably thinking to himself, I came back to school to try to improve my draft stock. And the way he played in the games where UConn was without McNeeley kind of, I think, hurt his draft stock. I think that's pretty safe to say. And I think a lot of that is getting to his head. But I think Alex Caravan still plays well when he's able to go through the motions and, kind of get into the lane. And I mean, I want to say he was 5 for 7 in 2-point field goals against Creighton, where he was able to kind of go to the painted area, get those floaters off that I just talked about. Liam was able to get from that 8 to 10 foot area distance, and he was able to knock down those shots. I mean, he did well doing that. I just think it's when he has time to think about when he has time to think about the shot, when he's open, I think they kind of just the mental side kind of gets to him and he's thinking too much. And there was a play where he's wide open from 3, he missed it. Solo got the offensive rebound, kicked it back out to AK, he missed again. Terrace got the offensive rebound once for another, and then kicked it back out of Caravan once more, who missed one more 3. And I mean, that was it was a tough look for AK, but Hurley was on the sideline clapping, just trying to keep AK locked in, encourage him, keep shooting. I mean, I think that's a guy who has gone through rough stretches shooting wise in his UConn career. We saw the last year where he had a stretch where it seemed like he couldn't knock down a 3. And this year, I think I want to say like 2, 3 maybe for his last 30 something threes he's taken. It's just not good. You'd expect to get a lot more out of a guy who's been now a 3-year starter in this program and two-time national champ. And I think just a lot of it probably also stems back to the Villanova game where he missed those two free throws, which would have probably gave UConn the win in that basketball game at Finneran Pavilion. And I think, yeah, he missed the front end of a free throw on Tuesday night, which, again, probably would have put UConn in a lot more comfortable of a position. But thankfully, it didn't come back to bite them. He did actually make a really big shot, the go-ahead shot that gave UConn the lead until the end of the basketball game. Of course, all the points after that came from the line, just because Creighton had to foul. But I think that's a guy who you got to continue to instill confidence in. He's going to get his shot back at some point. I'm fully confident that he will. And I mean, shoot or shoot. You got to keep shooting. The threes are going to fall eventually. I hope AK is able to kind of get around this tough stretch and the mental roadblock that's kind of facing him right now. And I still think this is a guy who has first round upside. And that's why he came back to school. And at the beginning of the year, he looked like he improved in every aspect of the game where he needed to. And I understand the stretch has been tough to watch, but I think he's going to turn it around. And I think once he gets back and you get Hassan healthy, that this Solo, I think he's a little banged up too. I want to say his wrist is a little messed up. He didn't make a three in this basketball game. He was 0 for 4. But, I mean, if you get your guys healthy, I think this is a team that, could still have Final Four upside. I'm a little bit out on UConn being able to make a Final Four. I just don't know that they have the talent and the health to be able to get that far in March. But I still think they're fully capable of making some noises, say an 8 to 6 seed, depending on how they finish off Big East play in the regular season. But, I mean, you look at the stretch of games, this is probably the most difficult stretch of games that they had to play, that they're going to play in the Big East regular season. With they beat Marquette on the road, dropped one to St. John's at home, which is kind of the one you needed to win. Just resume speaking, with Marquette not playing as well lately, and Creighton kind of being a little up and down this year. But Creighton had been playing really well, great brand of basketball as of late. And the win at Omaha was huge. Quad 1 win, obviously. Creighton, 24th in the country right now. They're obviously going to drop because of this loss. But if you can get back into the pool, that's great. And, I mean, hey, if you were to tell me that UConn win 2 of the 3 games in the stretch, then before it happened, then I'd be pretty happy hearing that. And, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the result on Tuesday night. Just really incredible game, wire to wire, just Big East basketball. Amazing. But yeah, nothing beats Big East basketball. But I just want to talk a little bit about Dan Hurley. After the game, went pretty. I saw posted a lot of places on social media where after the game he's waving to the crowd, telling them bye bye, pointing his ring finger, saying he's got the 2 rings. Saw he called the guy Baldy as he's heading back into the tunnel, and pointing to him saying I got 2 rings, Baldy. And then as he's walking into the tunnel, he's waving his arms up and down like he's trying to amp up a crowd when there's obviously no one else in the tunnel. But that was really funny to see, and it's also really funny to see the reactions people have. Of course, if you're a UConn fan, you love them. Who wouldn't if you're a UConn fan? But I know a lot of other fans across the nation who aren't UConn fans tend to dislike Hurley quite a bit, which I understand. He's not your coach. Yeah, that's probably a guy that you're not going to like very much, just with the energy he brings and the tenacity and a lot of the stuff he says to the media. But I think it's really important. Again, I kind of don't want to come off as a homer on this, but I think what Hurley's doing is really, really important for the sport of college basketball. The sport has lacked kind of a villain figure, a guy where he's kind of the face of the sport. I think they've lacked that for a while, especially with a lot of the big, legendary head coaches retiring, Coach K, Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams. A lot of people have stepped down, Jay Wright, Tony Bennett. I think they need a guy to emerge, and I think Hurley's kind of been that for college basketball, where he's the talking point of the sport. I think the most segments almost every segment on ESPN that's been talked about college basketball, speaking outside of game day and pretty much game day, and I mean Barstool here and there with whatever they do college basketball coverage wise. A lot of the talking points have been about Dan Hurley, not necessarily about the play of this UConn team, but of his sideline antics, what he said in interviews post game and off the court. And I think it brings a lot of attention to sport. And I talked about in the past how I think a lot of what Dan Hurley does is very calculated, where, listen, this team is nowhere near as talented as the teams of the past 2 years. And I think he understands that him kind of having these outbursts, which of course I think part of it is him actually losing his mind a little bit with the officiating and the refs, which I think he's been better about as of late. But I think a lot of what he says to the media too kind of alleviates a lot of the pressure off these players when they don't play very well. It kind of directs the attention more towards him rather than his players and his coaching staff, which I think is important. This is a team that needs to thrive off of confidence and will thrive off confidence if they have it. You know, if you have a lot of guys that are kind of in their head, Aiden Mahaney, Alex Caravan, especially as of late, and I think being able to take a lot of that pressure off those guys and direct them more towards him, or even taking the blame on some of the losses here, like against Memphis, where he kind of blew up and got the tech. I think that's again not ideal, but maybe there's better ways to go about it. But I think it does work in helping to take a lot of the negative attention and pressure off of some of those guys who are struggling, or just the team in general. And I think that's again maybe not the best way to go about it, but I do think it works slightly. And I mean, I think it's definitely helped at times. I think after as tough a loss as they suffered against St. John's, for them to come around and come out and have a great game at Chi Health Center where Liam McNeeley scores 38 points and get a huge win, much needed win. And I think that was just really, really important for this team. So I think it pretty much covers everything I had to take away from this Creighton basketball game. The UConn goes up to the Prudential Center. They play at the Rock against Seton Hall on Saturday. I think it's a 2:30 tip, if I'm not mistaken. Again, Seton Hall struggled a lot this year. I know people have called for Shaheen Holloway's firing. I don't agree with that at all. I think a lot of it is attributed to just Seton Hall having no NIL money. Shaheen, it's tough to build a roster without NIL money in the current state of college basketball in this day and age. And if you don't have it, it's tough to compete. And them losing Kadari Richmond hurt a lot. Pitino basically came out and indirectly said that it wasn't that Kadari didn't like playing for Sheen or wanted to leave Seton Hall necessarily. St. John just had NIL money that they threw at Kadari Richmond. He couldn't turn it down. I know he even left it on the table for Seton Hall to try to match whatever offer St. John's threw at him, and they couldn't just because they don't have the funding for it, which is unfortunate because college basketball is better when the Big East is more competitive. And of course, Seton Hall poured a huge part of the Big East in its history, and it sucks to see teams be a victim of just the current state of college basketball with the NIL and the transfer portal, not having the funds to be able to go and recruit players. But again, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think Hassan Yar is going to play very much in this basketball game, if at all. I probably would assume the starting lineup remains the same as the one Hurley rolled out against Creighton. I think Liam McNeeley is kind of going to be the point guard essentially in this basketball game. And Seton Hall plays differently than Creighton. They're not going to funnel you towards the paint. They don't have a rim protector, the caliber of Ry Kalkbrenner. But that's a team that does try to get out and force turnovers. They're not great at it. So as long as UConn is able to play a clean slate of basketball, they should win this game. Hopefully, of course, you never know with this team this year. But I think they're more than capable of being able to get out and hopefully get a comfy win in this basketball game at Seton Hall. In terms of turnovers, actually just going back to the Creighton game, they only turned it over 6 times. So vast improvement from the last 2 games against Marquette and St. John's, where they turned it over combined almost 50 times across those 2 games. So that's definitely nice to see that they're playing a much cleaner brand of basketball turnover-wise. So, yeah, just an improved. And the fouling's gotten a little bit better, too. I know Terrace and Sampson both got in foul trouble, but hopefully they clean that up. But, yeah, I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything for this episode today. Please, as always, if you like this content, this podcast, anything else you see on this channel, please subscribe, like, and please tell other people about it. Really, really helps with the algorithm on YouTube. And until the next episode, I will see you all next time.